I'm going to just jump right into it, friends. Eric Hoffer asserts the crumbling of a corporate body with the abandonment of the individual to his own devices is always a critical phase in social development. The newly emerging individual can attain some degree of stability and eventually become inured or accustomed to the burdens and strains of an autonomous or self-directed existence only when he is offered abundant opportunities for self-assertion or self-realization. He needs an environment in which achievement, acquisition, sheer action, or the development of his capacities and talents seems within easy reach. It is only thus that he can acquire the self-confidence and self-esteem that make an individual existence bearable or even exhilarating, right? So the individual's got to, right, face challenges and test him or herself and overcome and grow and cultivate and develop. And it takes, what he's saying here is achievement, acquisition, action, right? Development of capacities and talents. That is what makes for self-esteem and self-confidence. But if you don't have that, the individual self-esteem really, it becomes really problematic. Hoffer continues, he says, where self-confidence and self-esteem seem unattainable, the emerging individual becomes a highly explosive entity. He tries to derive a sense of confidence and of worth by embracing some absolute truth and by identifying himself with the spectacular doings of a leader or some collective body, be it a nation, a congregation, a party, or a mass movement. He and his like become a breeding ground of convulsions and upheavals that shake society to its foundations. It needs a rare constellation of circumstances if the transition from a communal to an individual existence is to run its course without being diverted or reversed by catastrophic complications. And so this idea that again that the development of the self in terms of esteem and confidence requires a kind of assortment of events. It really it entails freedom. The individual's got to want it. If things don't work out in a particular way and those opportunities are not available, the individual becomes a kind of shrimpy self. I mean, that's what happens when the self-esteem becomes shrimpy and small and like underdeveloped, and all kinds of crazy stuff can happen. That's what he's saying. It has been often said that power corrupts, but it is perhaps equally important to realize that weakness too corrupts. Power corrupts the few, while weakness corrupts the many. Hatred, malice, rudeness, intolerance, and suspicion are the fruits of weakness. The resentment of the weak does not spring from any injustice done to them, but from the sense of their inadequacy and impotence. And Shaler talked about this with resentment. It's not just the people are angry and pissed off. It's that they know that deep down the individual is responsible as well for the failure. Kenneth Burke says the guilt has got to go somewhere, right? The guilt for our sins and our failures. And we can mortify, and that's the kind of Christ-like mythos where we put the guilt on our own back, or we can victimize and blame shift and deflect the guilt onto an enemy or an other, or even those nearest to us, our neighbors, our even our own family. So all right, we cannot win the weak by sharing our wealth with them. They feel our generosity as oppression, right? I mean, it's this whole kind of question of should we just give money? I mean, would that solve the issue? And Hoffer says this. He says, we cannot win the weak by sharing our wealth with them. They feel our generosity as oppression. Nor can we win the weak by sharing our hope, pride, or even hatred with them. We are too far ahead materially and too different in our historical experience to serve as an object of identification. Our healing gift to the weak is the capacity for self-help. Right? We must learn how to impart to them the technical, social, and political skills which would enable them to get bread, human dignity, freedom, and strength by their own efforts. And I think, on some level, that's why education and kind of not just going to school, but this sort of self-directed education in which you, the individual, right, the person is responsible for not just answering test questions, but being kind of curious and creative and developing your own philosophy. And in some way, that's the way to develop a sense of self-esteem and self-confidence. Hoffer concludes, he says, my hunch is that in mastering the art or the technique of helping the weak to help themselves, we shall solve some of the critical problems which confront us, not only in our foreign relations, but also in our domestic affairs. All of these test questions, I believe, can be answered in red in the video.